Last thing we're going to look at this morning is going to be an article from the Wesleyan Covenant Association written by its head, Dr. Scott Field. He had an interesting thing to think about that I wanted to lift up. So, yeah, we're at 8:26. We're going to go a little bit long today. It's okay if you need to run. You can run anytime you want. You're not letting me down. I don't imagine that anybody watches all the stuff that I do. Here's the article. No ifs, ands, or buts. The UMC Judicial Council determines that if you don't like the ride, it's time for you to get off. So I've covered a lot of this, but there was a unique thought in this that I wanted to lift up to you. Surprisingly, the Judicial Council also has given stuck congregations an unanticipated gift and given United Methodist annual conferences an unwanted burden. What are you talking about, you might say? Didn't the Judicial Council just rule that 2549 cannot be used as a disaffiliation mechanism? Didn't they just stand in the way of conservative churches? This Field says, the recent United Methodist Judicial Council decision disallowing the use of paragraph 2549 as an exit path for local congregations brought roller coasters to mind. Remain seated in the ride until it comes to a complete stop and you are instructed to exit. You can read the decision yourself. He has a link to it there. And I have a link to this article in the show notes. But my shorthand metaphor for this conclusion is the disaffiliation ride has come to a complete stop. You are instructed to exit. So this one seems like a call from Reverend Field. All right, we've been trying to play nice. We've been trying to find a way out. They've just closed all the doors. Now you vote with your feet. You leave. So I think this would be rightly read and received as a call from the WCA. If you are a conservative evangelical Christian and you know that being in covenant with the United Methodist Church is not good, then all the other options have been exhausted and it's time to get off. It's time to get out. That is, the UMC is done talking about, considering, processing, and generally even recognizing anything at all about disaffiliation of congregations. We are a, quote, connectional denomination, end quote, not a collection of local churches making our own choices. The UMC is done with disaffiliation. Either sit down and remain seated or get off the ride. I'm writing metaphorically, of course, he says. What the Judicial Council determined is that the United Methodist Book of Discipline, paragraph 2553, which authorized congregational disaffiliations, expired. I'm going to skip that part. My perspective here might be counterintuitive, but consider for a moment that the Judicial Council decision has given stuck congregations an unanticipated gift and at the same time given United Methodist conferences an unwanted burden. This is so the unanticipated gift for the fellowship of the stuck. I think he meant to have that bolded and bigger. If you are part of the congregation feeling stuck with no possible exit from the UMC, it's worth a look in the mirror to ask, why are we feeling stuck? The answer for most seems to be, yes, we want to leave, but we want to take our church building with us. We built it, we maintained it, insured it, repaired it, paid off the mortgage on it. We used it for decades. It's only fair that if we leave, we get the building too. And there is no question that our church buildings have precious memories of baptisms, weddings, funerals, meaningful fellowship, memories of beloved sisters and brothers in the faith, personal conversions, and heartwarming worship. These are sacred places to us. But our church buildings also have roofs to replace, parking lots to resurface, boilers to repair or replace, mold and mildew problems, antiquated entries and exits, and upkeep expenses that account for a major part of most local church budgets. Besides, there are also the simmering territorial disputes in many church buildings as to who controls the church kitchen, where the youth group can decorate their own space, how to fund the organ repairs, whether or not the choir needs a dedicated practice room, and if the nursery in the basement was good enough for our kids, why do these new parents need something better? For our kids, I didn't put the stress in the right place. Buildings are a tool for the ministry. It's not the ministry itself. Taking an honest look at our feelings of stuckness might reveal that somehow over time the church building has taken up an oversized place of devotion in our hearts. Rather than facilitating the Jesus mission, our facilities can sometimes keep us from engaging the mission, the Jesus mission in the first place. Maybe we're stuck over the wrong thing, the building. One of the reasons I have liked moving I grew up in a United Methodist clergy household. I've moved a lot earlier in life. I've lived here in Nowata longer than anywhere I've ever lived, 9 years, more than. I like moving because you get a new set of problems. It's not that you can make any decisions where there are no problems, but one of the things that you find is there are problems in every situation you're in, and you've just learned to deal with them. I think the saying is the devil you know. You'd rather deal with the devil you know than the devil you don't. But the thing is, when you leave those things behind, you feel this weight come off you. And you've heard a lot of global Methodist clergy and laity talk about this. When they leave the United Methodist Church, all this weight leaves them. They didn't realize they were carrying such a heavy load. But that's true also for leaving a church building. Even if you stick with the same people, a building can be an albatross, and for many congregations, it really is. And here's what's happened. That's all I'm going to read of this article for right now. But he says the United Methodist Church has actually hurt itself with this decision because there are going to be a lot of churches that vote with their feet now, and they leave these buildings, and you know who's going to have to manage them? Conference Board of Trustees. And sure, there are some churches in growing urban or suburban areas where it has a high property value and they can liquidate the buildings and sell them at a profit. But there are so many rural churches in depressed areas where the real estate is not worth much. It's going to be hard to find a buyer that can make the economics fit. They're going to be stuck with these albatross buildings that are eventually, if they're not kept up well, hazards that they are legally required to maintain. So they've harmed themselves, and meanwhile, they've given you a prime opportunity. If you've got an albatross old building that's got all kinds of issues for the people, if you got a building, here's the thing, a building that's too big for the people that you got. This is a problem for a lot of churches. You got this huge sanctuary, you don't have the people to fill it out. This is a huge blessing where you can leave all that behind. Fine, if they want it, they can have it. The building is not the church. The people are the church. We know this. We know it in here. Sometimes we got to receive it here. What the WCA now is saying is it's time to understand this. There's been a prolonged period of questioning, okay, can we keep the buildings and the assets in tow? The answer has now been given, no. And you could look at this as negative. You could be a negative Nancy. You could say, we can't leave behind these memories. The building is too special. But we're not called to be slaves to buildings or stuff. Jesus warned that the only competitor he names, idol that he names that competes for him, with him, is mammon. Stuff, the god of stuff. And, stuff can be submitted to Christ's lordship, but stuff can also become something that competes with Christ's lordship. And if you're clear that to be in covenant relationship with the United Methodist Church is not good, then you've got a choice to make. I'm a member of the Global Methodist Church, and I'm sure it's not perfect, but it does not make me compromise my conscience, my fidelity to Christ. I couldn't say that about the United Methodist Church. I left pretty gladly. My church was able to take its assets with it. But if you told me that we couldn't, then there's a decision to be made. And it's worth not thinking just of the negative, but to think of the positive as well. And just being done with some of the problems that have come with your church building. Just think about it. And there might be some liberty available for you. Now, I should say, if you're happy in the United Methodist Church, please stay. Don't come to the Global Methodist Church. Don't join another covenant body. Stay in the United Methodist Church. But if you know that they've gone an ungodly, unjustifiable direction, think about the good things that'll happen if you leave. Don't be a coward. Don't be married to the status quo. Be bold, be courageous. This is the exhortation from Joshua now, and it ends in, as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. Have that confidence. Consider the blessing that it might be to leave, even if you can't take everything with you. When we have spiritual forebears like Abraham, who left everything he ever knew to follow the Lord, then surely it's not an unreasonable request to consider doing the same.